I think at this point in time, call the meeting to order for the Planning Commission on the evening here of a sunny and warm March 25th, 2021. So I'd like to welcome all the members of the Planning Commission, as well as Merle Tessier, the zoning administrator for the town of Newfane, as well as Jeanette Perry, who has been regularly coming to our meetings. So thank you, Jeanette, for being here. Great to see you again. And we do have our meeting called to order then, Nolan, for 6:05 p.m. So what I'll do is go to a share screen and bring up the agenda so we can all take a look at it together. And what we can do is look at introductions and additions to the agenda. So I've just did a round of introductions, but if anyone feels they would like to say a few more words about that, by all means. All right. Okay, so we'll move on. Are there any additions to the agenda? Okay, hearing no additions to the agenda, we will move to the next portion of our work, and I'll be right with you. And what I'm going to do right now is just cut and paste some agenda, put this agenda into the chat. So, Nolan, do you have the minutes that you would like to share?
Yes.
Great.
I have two sets.
I did do a joint share. Okay, there we go.
These are the organizational meeting minutes. I think people have had time to review them, maybe.
I looked, but we just glance on through. If anybody sees anything. No one under Planning Commission meetings, date, location, and times of meetings. It reads, a motion was made by Nolan and seconded by Jane that the Planning Commission hold its meetings.
Yes.
No apostrophe there.
Yeah.
Small matter, but there we are.
Yeah.
And if you could drop us down to the bottom of the page. Oh, the next page, okay. Are there any other amendments to the organizational meeting minutes? Additions, deletions, amendments? Okay. Hearing no other amendments, additions, deletions, might I entertain a motion for accepting the minutes as amended?
There, so moved.
Okay, and might we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor of accepting the organizational minutes for March 11th, 2021, as amended, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Thank you, Nolan, for showing us the organizational minutes. And now Nolan is working on a screen share for the regular meeting minutes.
Indeed.
For March 11th.
Jane has already pointed out that this should say regular.
I didn't catch that.
Okay.
Right. So far, looking good.
Is Rob Ham's title part of his, is that just an honorific, or is it pastor, or I don't know.
REV dot. Yeah. Thank you. And we're glancing through the minutes here. Jane, do you see anything?
No?
How is Jane today?
Sorry I was late. I was getting my supper delivered.
Ah, that's quite all right. We're doing all right. So, okay. Well, do we see any other amendments or additions or deletions? Hearing none, might we entertain a motion to accept the minutes for the regular meeting on March 11th as amended?
So moved.
And do we hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor of accepting the Planning Commission regular meeting minutes of March 11th, 2021 as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And the minutes are complete. Okay. Thank you, Nolan, for that work and for keeping us in good shape there. So, taking a look at the chat then, this would be the time for unscheduled members of the public. And as Jeanette, do you have anything that you would like to say, or would you not have anything you would like to say at this point in time? And also Merle, as unscheduled members of the public.
Nothing at this time.
Okay, I just wanted to give you that chance. And so we're moving quite nicely into old business. So we turn this right on over to Jane, who will take on broadband update, Deerfield Valley Communications Union District. Jane, take it away.
I can sort of combine 1 and 3. Myself as the representative from Newfane and Luke Stafford as my alternate were both reappointed last select board meeting. So the paperwork has been sent off, so that's all legally set. We have to be reappointed by the 1st of April every year according to the laws that govern CUDs. So that is done. I'm still looking for another alternate. We can have more than one if someone is interested in the broadband project. Please let me know. The broadband project itself, we got really good news the last meeting. The Green Mountain Power is waiving what are called their readying charges. That's the charges that they usually make for getting their poles all set and allowing someone else to run a wire on their poles. And they have come to an agreement with the state of Vermont that they're going to waive that. That's going to save us about $3 million. So that's a really good thing to hear about. We've gotten some bids back in. The meeting we have next week will be going over the bids. So hopefully we will have something lined up to start the work this May. The broadband group has an annual meeting in the middle of April or towards the end of April. So that is a big organizational meeting technically. Hopefully at that point we'll know what we're doing this year. So the money is coming fast and furious. The state is putting up more money. You know, if you know anybody's got a few $1 million to spare, just let me know. I'll be happy to help out.
Put me on that one there, Jane. You know, so
1 or 2 million.
yeah, let's go with 3.
Uh, but things are moving. It's I did meet with the Townsend Select Board last what's today? Thursday. On Tuesday. Townsend is one of the few towns in the all of Bennington and Windham counties that has not joined yet, and they seem to. I don't know where they got the idea, but they seem to feel that we'll never get this accomplished for about 40 years. So, and they also, I don't know, they just apparently believe that it would never work, so they don't feel it necessary to join. They're going to get left out of the planning. They're going to get left out. So I'm trying to drumbeat up with Townsend a bunch of irate citizens who will demand that they come and join us. So if anyone knows an irate citizen in Townsend who does not have broadband, please tell them to talk to their select board. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox now.
So would you say, Jane, that the broadband idea and implementation, that time has arrived, it seems? There's just so much going on with it.
It's now, and COVID has definitely lit a fire under the whole project. People realize that if everyone's going to move to Vermont and work remotely from New York City, they got to have broadband. And, you know, if you're going to have a home business, you got to have broadband. If you want to go to college online, which everyone is doing now, you got to have broadband. So it's definitely a time its time has come.
Yeah. Well, and guess what, Jane? You are here to receive the gifts.
I am beating the drums.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, and this is great news. It really is great news, and pertains so particularly to economic development as part of our town plan. And you reported on these things in the last select board meeting. Was there any other discussion at the select board meeting apropos of the planning commission that we should be apprised of?
Not really. They were still getting organized, so they did finally select a vice chair for the select board. So.
And who is the vice chair?
You would ask me that.
Okay. Well, we'll circle back to that.
One of the new people. I've forgotten. There's a Jody and a
Anna and Golub.
And so it was one of the. I don't remember which one now, to be honest.
Which one, Kate?
Well, I think that there's Ann and Katie, right? Are the new people?
Yeah.
So it's probably Ann then. I think Ann was the one who was.
Yeah.
Nodding in agreement, but that's great.
Yeah, excellent. Well, thanks. Yeah, that's great, Jane. All right, so then moving along, the zoning bylaw for short-term rentals, next steps and discussion is somewhat early, and we'll have to make some decisions here. Lynn had indicated to, and rightly so, she had indicated to some respondents that even though it's 6:56, we might start a little bit earlier, such as 6:30. And it's still 6:22 or even earlier. I think it's probably, what, 6:19? My clock is fast. Is that correct? It's about 6:19 right now?
I have 6:18.
Okay, right. So,
18 and a half.
yeah. Well, we run a tight ship here, Walt, you know.
I'm impressed. I'm impressed.
Yeah, well.
You're an impressive group.
Well, yeah, we like to think so. We'll see how that goes when we get to the short-term rental discussion, but nonetheless, we sally forth here. So I'm going to take chair liberties here and shuffle the agenda and try to respect it as best as possible. But I think moving on, really.
Can I make one little question or comment? I've seen the emails going to Lynn from several people.
Yes.
And people seem to be saying, oh, we didn't know this was going to happen. We haven't ever heard about this before. I mean, how many times have I sat through a meeting where we talked to members of the public, and it has been on Front Porch Forum. So I'm not sure how else we can get word out to people that this is a coming item.
Right. Well, we'll certainly get back to that point. We won't let that point go. And so thank you, Jane, for that. And we'll definitely will come back to that even tonight. So, all right. Well, then moving on to the next select board meeting. The question is, the select board meets on the first and third Mondays, I do believe. And so the first Monday in April will be April 5. So then who might be interested in attending the next select board meeting? And that's my question.
I should be able to.
Okay,
Here.
great.
Yeah,
And
I've got a conflict with a DVCUD Communications Committee meeting. So,
Jane, that's no excuse.
well, it starts at 5 and theoretically is over by 6, but it never
Oh,
is. So,
You're overcommitted as of you have enough to do. So that's great. Thank you, Kate. Yes, go ahead, Kate.
Is there a meeting that, or is there a post-Easter holiday? Just my calendar reflects Easter Monday. I don't know if that's just a calendar quirk or.
That's a good point.
My kids are back in school that day, so I don't think it's an official holiday. I'll put it on my calendar that I'll plan to attend and confirm it.
Great. Okay. So we'll assume that it is April 5, and let us then consider what we might present that night. Well, Kate, since you volunteered so wonderfully here, do you have any thoughts on what you might like to present? I imagine short-term rental will come up. So that's probably fair. Any other thoughts?
I think it would be helpful before then, and we'll come to it, but to have a kind of clear position from the Planning Commission on the short-term rental issue, just so we don't end up in a debate that should better be had with all of the Planning Commission. Other than that, I haven't thought ahead about it. I don't know if it's early to talk about the work that we've just started, Ken, or if there are other Planning Commission issues that should be brought up. Jane, if you, oh, sorry.
Yeah, Jane, Nolan, any thoughts?
I would imagine that people will be most interested in Jane's updates on broadband, and I don't know if you give them in another way or if you have a kind of 2-sentence version that I could pass along.
well, nothing's really changed since the last select board meeting, or nothing really to report until we get the bids in and review them and make decisions about the bids. There really isn't anything more to report right now.
Okay. Forgive me if I'm forgetting something, but otherwise I will welcome your suggestions.
Okay, great. Nolan, will you be there, Nolan, because you're televising? Or?
I'm supposed to be on vacation that week.
All right.
But I can.
No.
Vacations aren't really a thing right now, so.
I know. I joke with my students about how they're all going to Cancun, and they, nobody's going anywhere. So, okay. Yeah, really, I was just asking Nolan if there's anything you wanted, and if you thought of anything you might think appropriate to present, that Kate would present.
If I think of anything, I'll email Kate.
Thanks.
All right. Okay, so we can move right along then on the next item, which would be the Development Review Board report, which is a standing agenda item. There may not be a report, but Walt is here. So Walt,
It's a one-liner. We're scheduling a hearing on the 21st of April for Mr. Meyer's request for the Green Cemetery, Green Burial Grounds, and we expect to get the warning out on the street by Monday. But the hearing itself is on the 21st. This is an issue, I guess it's been hanging fire for a long time, so this should at least probably give him the approval.
Right,
And that's where we are.
right. Well, good. So that's something to we'll look forward to. And do you believe that'll be a Zoom meeting?
Yeah, that'll be a Zoom meeting. I guess it's in two parts. There's the site visit, which will be in the flesh with social distancing and masks required. And then we go to the hearing itself, which will be a Zoom hearing. And like I say, we'll have the warning on the street Monday, God willing. And it'll be the 21st of April, the actual meeting.
Right. Right.
Something like, I think that there are a dozen butters, and I'm not sure what kind of interest they'll have one way or the other, but and about half of them are in Vermont and half of them are in Connecticut or Georgia or other places.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks, Walt. Appreciate that. And as always, great to have you with us.
Always a pleasure.
Yes, you've been faithful to the end. You were even at the meeting on the day that the pandemic broke loose a year ago. So even then, you remember we weren't wearing masks or anything. We were just like, oh.
Yeah, that was in the old days a year ago. Like
yeah, we were.
World.
I know. Okay, well then we will keep moving forward and advancing the agenda. So at this point, item number 6 on old business, which is called planning the work of the Planning Commission. So Kate, might I turn it over to you? Planning the work of the Planning Commission.
Oh, sure. Our working group report.
Yes.
So Ken and I met. We've met initially, I think, before the last meeting, and then again this week to review and work on shorter summaries of the various sections of the town plan. We have kind of gone through and tried to distill the longer report into core idea, core value, and core policy, or core challenge, excuse me. Ken, forgive me if I've misspoken. And I think it's been a useful framework for kind of getting to the heart of what is in the town plan. The next steps are to include equally short items for each of the town sections, kind of what's underway or who's working on the issue now, and then kind of what one or two or a couple of the top priorities are. And I think some of that was reflected in the earlier priority list that the Planning Commission had sent to the select board. And I think some of that gets a little bit of reconsideration, both just as time has passed here and as I think the world has changed a bit over the last couple of years. And we are planning to finish up kind of a working draft. And I think, Corinne, correct me if I'm misspeaking, but by the next meeting, hopefully have this kind of summary of the town plan to circulate to everyone.
And so Kate and I split that up, and what we need to do is then just meld the two parts of the work. And I'd say probably about 8 pages, and it's not densely populated pages. They're easy to read pages, but it's about, I don't know, 6 to 8 maybe so far. The document maybe would top out around 8 to 10 perhaps. But we think that's a good achievement given that the current town plan is up over 80 pages. So this would be a handy guide. And I think it would show everybody, exactly where we sit, with the town plan. And I think what's exciting is to also show who's also working on, priorities in the town plan and may not even know it. So, we get to highlight, volunteer efforts throughout the town, people who are doing the great work already. Not to mention one of our own, Jane Douglas, who's working on broadband, which is, as you rightly noted, Jane, it's all about economic development. So you're in the thick of the economic development page for sure. And, you know, we think about those who are working on forest blocks in town and land purchases, you know, next to the West River. So Deb Luskin, who's been, you know, deeply involved in that effort in the past. I don't know about in the present, but I know in the past she's been working hard on that. And so that's been a key aspect of, you know, preserving our natural resources and such. Not to mention our very own subject of our very favorite subject, seemingly the focus of tonight, as we await some folk who are going to make their way in. But the short-term rental question is also about economic development and, you know, home-based enterprises and such. So, you know, whether we do short-term rental bylaws amendments or not, you know, the very fact that we're talking about short-term rentals is, you know, evidence of our interest in economic development. However that is solved, and that's for the record by no means resolved. It's still a wide open question. So not hesitating, but, you know, sort of talking down the clock just a little bit just to see what's going on. We're awaiting Lynn. However, we have worked our way through the agenda. So this is interesting. What we do now is we would go back to zoning bylaw for short-term rentals, next steps. Discussion. So in accordance with my understanding anyway of open meeting law, it's important for us to, you know, look at the correspondence, not only to look at it, but also to read it. Now, I don't know if reading it out loud is absolutely what's required, if we can do a share screen such that it's at least, you know, recorded in a video manner. I'm happy to read the letters and happy to share the letters if others want to join in on reading them. However, that said, I do have in mind some correspondence that we might take on that's related to other matters. So I think I will shift our attention then to the correspondence on other issues, and that would then bring us back up the agenda to short-term rentals. So allow me to go to my email and generate some announcements that are related to other matters, which is to say correspondence from different sources. For instance, allow me to call your attention to the Windham Regional Commission's Looking Forward webinar series. And the next item on their Looking Forward webinar series would be Conservation Subdivisions, Designing with the Land, April 21st at 6 p.m. They describe it as this: join Windham Regional Planners to learn more about an alternative approach to subdivision development. Conservation subdivisions allow more flexibility in the design process and can be used to protect important resources and open space in your town. So if you're interested in this, let me know and I can forward that email. And what I'm doing right now is looking at my email where all this correspondence is sitting. So I can't see hands or really anybody. So if you have any questions about anything I'm doing, or if Lynn has shown up, then we can switch away from this. Okay, so hearing no voices, I will go forward. I'd like to read this one. Subject line is 2021 Southern Vermont Economy Summit. Young professionals respond to In Conversation with Governor Scott. So this is the 4th annual Southern Vermont Economic Summit called Reconnect. And it occurs on March 12, May 12, May 13, May 14. And guess what? It's virtual. Guess where the location is? It says anywhere Vermont. Looking for that zip code. So registration is now open. And if you're interested in this, we will be in conversation with Governor Scott and Lieutenant Governor Molly Gray, Envisioning Southern Vermont's Future and the Future Talks Back. So,
I think I already registered for that one.
yes,
Did Lynn forward that?
she may well have. She may well have. And the story is that I believe I was at the first one, or at least the second one. And last year's, of course, we were all set to go, and then, of course, couldn't. Nonetheless, it's well worth going to.
I think. Let me get my other calendar.
There's yet another announcement that I'd like to convey, and I'll be right with you. There was a lot of mail of late.
What were the dates on that one again?
Oh, sure. Allow me to skip ahead here. Southern Vermont Economy Summit is May 12, May 13, May 14. So May 12 through 14, which is really interesting because in the past, these have been one-day events. And now with our new world that we live in, stretch out the joy over 3 days as opposed to only having it for one day.
I'm trying to find whether I did sign up for that one or not. Okay.
Well, while you're looking, I would also wish to point out to everybody that, you know, for any of these conferences, especially the ones that have registration fees, that we have a budget that is designed specifically to, you know, accommodate the commissioners and potentially others who want to be part of this, but, you know, that's what the budget's for. Okay, I'd like to make another announcement. March 26th from 12 until 1 is the monthly placemaking meetup, and it's called Color and Beauty. And I have been to one of these, and it's actually, it's not a bad place. It's actually a good place to do some great networking. March may be cold, wet, and muddy, but it can also be bright, colorful, and beautiful. The announcement says, join your fellow Vermont placemakers. What better role than to be a Vermont placemaker for our March monthly meetup focused on adding color and beauty to our communities, large and small ways. We'll spend an hour sharing placemaking tips and tricks, ideas, inspiration, examples, and guess what? Cheer. Now, if I haven't sold this, I can't sell anything. March 26th from 12 until 1. If you're interested, let me know. I'll forward that to you. That, by the way, is tomorrow. So, I just noticed. Okay. Any word from anybody? Should I be paying attention to something else right now? Anybody? I'm just trying to respect correspondence here, and we're going through bit by bit, correspondence by correspondence. Anyone else? Okay. Nobody else has shown up, so I will keep going with the announcements. And I should point out, while I'm working through our correspondence that comes to the Planning Commission, is that for those of you who are new to the sort of the cycle, what we're looking at is the season. You know, once town meeting is over and, you know, the organizational meetings have occurred and the planning commissions, the development review boards, the select boards, once they're settled, then VLCT, Vermont League of Cities and Towns, and other, you know, affiliated allied organizations start to, you know, bring up their meeting schedule and get that into our hands. And so in years past, we've been typically quite busy in the spring, well into the summer, actually, with these meetings going all over Vermont, which was super exciting, and I really enjoyed it, and we all look forward to that. Okay, well, I have one more for you. I think this should do it. This one's quite interesting, and I don't know if I can make it, but nonetheless, here we go. Open Meeting Law Basics for Municipal Boards. Join us on April 1st for the first training in our Transparency Essentials series. In this webinar, VLCT attorney Susan Senning will cover the basic requirements of the open meeting law for municipal boards, along with remote public meeting requirements to ensure compliance. with several temporary laws during the time of COVID-19. This session includes a live Q&A with Municipal Assistance Center attorneys. So we get to meet the attorneys in person, well, through the screen. Nonetheless, Thursday, April 1st, 11 a.m. And get this, not only register today, and there is a fee. If you're a VLCT member, it looks like it's $48. So if you're interested and you're a commissioner, and possibly if you're not, I don't know about that, but so I don't want to speak too much, but if commissioners, you can be reimbursed. So I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah,
Because-
I'd like to go to that because I don't think I understand, Robert's Rules of Orders, let alone how it all works for a town government at this point.
Right, and this is about, precisely what I'm trying to enact right now, and that is, and Lynn is always very good with this, is just making sure, we have correspondence, we read the correspondence that, that we've posted, that we've done all the things that we need to do to make sure that, we're respecting the town's ability to, define this, really. And of course, Nolan's heroic efforts with, televising this for us. So that is not required, but it does give that another means for the town to access. And of course, our posting of the minutes in a timely way, and so on and so forth. Okay, well, I believe that I've done, I think we'll now do need to move forward. So for those who were notified that, we might start as early as 6:30, it's 6:40 right now. Maybe some people will start coming in around 6:55. So allow me then to start this part of the meeting. This is zoning bylaw for short-term rentals, next steps and discussion. I should say that we've received a considerable number of letters from people in town over the last week who have registered their concerns with the proposed short-term rental zoning bylaw amendment that has been circulated as a proposed amendment to people who are short-term rental operators. And so we have those letters, and I do believe we will go over those letters. However, allow me to, before we do that, go with Merle. Merle Tessier is our zoning administrator here in the town of Newfane. And Merle, thank you for being here. I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you would like to have the floor, this would be your time. Thank you for the work that you did to mark up and comment on the proposal, which we received today. And we could go over that, or if you would like to walk us through it and I can bring it up on the screen, you let me know what you would like to do.
First off, I think it'd be better if you distributed that letter I sent you.
Yes.
And consider it. Everybody come back with their feedback, but an additional item, with the state considering regulating bed and breakfasts and short-term rentals, I wonder if it might be a wise move to hold off on much further work until they decide what they're going to do. You could end up with some conflicts or just a lot of redundancy.
Yes.
And the other note is doing the bylaw changes kind of in a hit or miss fashion. The cemetery was a prime example. Somebody complained. You drop everything and you make a whole new set of rules. You kind of open Pandora's box. Now, if somebody else has a pet project, they come to you and they say, well, you did it for them. How come you can't do it for us? So I think you're in the process of redoing all the bylaws anyway. It might be better to wait, do everything in one fell swoop.
Mm-hmm.
From a practical point of view, you do it this way, you're going to have 2 hearings on just this one item. If you do the whole bylaw at one time, you have 2 hearings for the whole thing instead of a collection of hearings. So that's my own personal thought on it. And having been on the planning commission, it makes more sense to me because your job is tough enough already. That I know.
Yes, having been there.
Haven't done it, yeah.
Right.
We did it when I was on it. We did it under the gun. Time was running out. Didn't have a planning commission. We had one person who was the planning commission. He couldn't have a meeting because he couldn't get a quorum. And then the deadline came up and the town panicked. He said, well, put something together. We sort of did.
Right. Would you like to walk through the document that you presented to us, or?
If you want.
Okay. So I'm going to just give me a moment while I get that document set up. I'll be right with you. While I'm doing this, Merle, if there's anything else you would like to offer as I, oh, okay. So here's the document. And thanks for doing this for us.
It's just the first step.
Right. Yes. So, yeah. So the questions that you're posing to us, are you proposing a separate freestanding bylaw just for short-term rentals? And, that's a question. I don't have an answer for that. All I know is that we have a set of documents that, if anybody else wants to weigh in, by all means, but as a freestanding bylaw, maybe Merle, what do you mean exactly by a freestanding bylaw?
Well, we currently have subdivision bylaws, and we have the zoning bylaws. The appearance of this one is now you're trying to create a separate category just for these short-term rentals, which would have its own separate bylaws. And you create a lot of duplication here.
Duly noted. Duly noted. I don't think the intent was to have a separate bylaw.
No, well, I was talking to Lynn this morning, and she said that she intended it to be just part of the zoning bylaw.
Yeah, so that would entail some major modifications.
Yes. Okay. Right. Duly noted. I mean, that's where, we have to, we hear this and we're going to take it into account. So the town of Newfane does not have a licensed building inspector. We do not issue certificates of occupancy. Would you like to speak to that, Merle?
What's the sense of putting in something that we can't enforce?
Yes. Yeah.
This another tack that I'm taking. If we can't enforce it, don't put it in the writing. It's kind of senseless.
Okay.
So that's, to me, that's a major point. The other side of that whole thing is if we take on inspection in any sort, and we don't have a licensed inspector, you set the town up for some major liability.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody comes back and says, well, the town said that this is an okay organization because they inspected it, and whoever inspected didn't have the qualifications to issue an opinion. that leaves us wide open.
Hmm.
Not a good place to be, not in today's world.
Oh. And as you know, many of the property owners offer their properties through online rental and booking services, and they take the responsibility for rooms and meals, tax filing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we've got that written in there too. It's, you know, we're trying to run people's business, and I'm trying to keep the town out of getting into that situation where you're trying to tell people how they run their own business.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, we have to tread lightly. There's, you know, some other factors on this. When I was on the planning commission, we were at a point in time when people were just fed up with zoning in this town. And the sampling we took at the hearing that we had regarding that issue, it came down to 50-50.
Mm.
So what I try to avoid is pushing people over that 1% line.
Mm.
And then you see zoning thrown out. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not a good way to do it, but
Mm-hmm.
and when the people speak, they speak.
Yes, yes, they do.
So keep that in mind.
Okay, good.
Okay, 545.5, your registration. It appears that that is a business license. There's a problem. I'm not sure the town is in a position where they can issue licenses per se. And if you require a business license for one class of company or organization, you should probably be requiring it for everybody who has a small business in town. Otherwise, you come up with a discrimination suit. So I have my doubts about that.
Okay.
And let's see, 545.6. Does the town have the authority to order people to do certain things, operational procedures, operational requirements? I'm not sure they have the authority to do that. And my favorite one, who determines an imminent health hazard? And what is an imminent health hazard? It wasn't defined.
Yes.
Any
Okay.
Any comments?
No, you're walking us through the document, and that's perfectly.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, anybody can jump in, but this is good. Thank you for doing this for us.
Okay. I guess you've addressed 545.6.c, sort of. It was kind of an odd reading. If a child is less than 13 and he can't stay in Newfane.
That were.
I think, well, yeah, maybe we don't want the young ones in town.
We just can't have it, Merle. We can't.
No, I realize that, you know, you got to watch. And I just want to know, what do you do with the kids under 13?
Okay, good. All right.
Let's see, what's 545.7? What is this? Oh, yeah, the audit. Trying to get the town authority to go in and audit somebody's books. You're really getting on thin ice there. I think that should just be thrown completely out.
Okay.
I don't think you have the legal authority to do that.
No, but was she referring to the books or just the audit of their procedures?
Read it carefully.
Okay, so, yeah,
And the fine level, $200. Well, that level is defined in the existing bylaws at $100. And a lot of people thought that was rather excessive. So that has to be looked at. It's like you're inserting this in the bylaws, but now you're saying, well, if you're a bed and breakfast, we're going to whack you $200 a day instead of 100. So that's got to be addressed.
okay,
And that goes with the code compliance. That goes back to my original. If we don't have somebody who is legally qualified to do the inspection, it's doubtful that it's going to get done. And why bother? You know, don't put it in the rules.
okay,
And collecting the sales and use and meals tax. Airbnb and Verbo, most of the large organizations already do it. And I would say that most of the people operating are aware of it. If they're not going with Airbnb or Verbo or one of the big ones, they are aware that they have to collect it. And the last page is just some odd comments. Like, are you expecting somebody to ride around town looking for houses that might be bed and breakfasts? I know it's not in my budget.
yeah, I was gonna say, Merle, that would be you.
Yeah,
Or maybe Walt would ride shotgun or something.
No, thanks.
my budget is razor thin.
Okay. All right, well, thanks, Merle, for walking us through this. Does anybody have a question or a comment at this point? Or should I go on to the next letters addressed to the Planning Commission?
Did you forward that document to us, Ken?
Yes. If you wouldn't mind putting that in the minutes that I'm supposed to do that.
Okay.
Yeah. That holds me accountable. And I'll make a note right now too.
Let me say, if anybody has some comments, I'm in the office Tuesday and Thursday afternoon. They could either email or they could call. And I'm willing to discuss any of these items and more.
Great. Yes, and thank you, Merle, for that. And so I think as we look at the correspondence, I think that what we're contemplating is, Merle's original point about, whether we might consider deferring action. It seems that we should come out of this meeting with some determination of what our next step is going to be, whatever that next step is. But I'd like to, unless other commissioners disagree, some understanding of what we're going to do next. This can also be the type of meeting where we just look at material and agree to return to the material, in 2 weeks. Or we can look at material and, come to an agreement or have a motion. So there may be yet other options, but I wanted to mention that. Now that what I'm doing now is I'm going to go to another share screen in which I show some correspondence. And so I won't be able to see you. And so if you could speak up definitely, and you have anything that you want to say with respect to Merle's presentation or with respect to my comments just a minute ago, please do speak up. And again, I can't see you, so. All right. Just interrupt at any point. Okay. All right, so here we are. I think you can read this. It's addressed to Lynn and to me. I'm going to take it as being addressed to the Planning Commission. I'll go ahead and, everybody can see it? Can everybody see what I'm looking at? Hi, Ken. Hi, Lynn and Ken.
Yep.
Great. So, and Nolan, is the camera picking this up?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, well, I guess I'll go ahead and read. If anybody else wants to interrupt me and keep reading as well, by all means. But hi, Lynn and Ken, I'm reading through the document, want to share comments and questions, but don't really have enough time to devote to this. So my request still stands to slow this down until more hosts can weigh in on this. Questions: what nuisance impacts of STRs are you referring to? Can you cite examples in our area? And you say they occur often. There should therefore be many examples. To ensure the safety of occupants, have there been examples of STR guests injured from their stay in an Airbnb in our area? Business tax account: every Airbnb rental charges and pays the appropriate VT state taxes, 13%, I believe, money for the state. Traditional peace and quiet: I'll give you that. It's usually quiet here at the upper end of Baker Brook Road until people from out of state who own camps near my place come up. July is the worst, not just fireworks, lots of gunfire, and it's not unusual to hear it after dark. These aren't short-term renters who, so far in my experience, come up and ski and need a place to rest before going out to ski again. I can see my rental from my house and I haven't heard any noise. They have followed house rules and left the place clean. Before going further, I wonder what's broken. Usually legislation comes to remedy a problem. What problem am I creating by doing short-term rentals? Is there really a serious problem that merits all this scrutiny? In the final analysis, I wonder if the crafters of these rules just see there's money being made and want a piece for the town. Why not cut to the case, impose a tax, and be done with it? Also, the state legislature is working on all this, and it may be a duplication of effort. It seems overcomplicated. I know many industries claim to be self-regulating, but the Airbnb feedback system works really well, I think, to weed out troublesome renters. My renters have come and gone quietly, respected the property, spent money in VT, and left. I think it's a win-win. Good luck to us all tomorrow. And I think that means, see what the date of that was. That was probably sent late last night. Okay, so that's a letter. And let me go to another one. I think Maya will go with that. As I'm clicking in different emails and such, did it go to another email?
Yep.
Anyway, it did? Good, so I don't have to go in and out. Okay, so you can read this for yourself, but I'm feeling under some obligation to read it out loud as well. So thank you so much for sending this draft, Lynn. I appreciate the effort forward by the folks involved. I read the previous draft and failed to provide input. I found it overwhelming and cumbersome, but should have responded regardless. How am I doing, everyone?
Lovely.
Okay. Am I entertaining you at least? I mean, that's it. Okay, here we go. I'll really juice it up here. My thoughts and reactions echo Luella's in many areas, and we'll read Luella's. Like Luella, we depend on the income from our unit to make ends meet here. This was a factor in moving back here in our choice of property, given our awareness of how difficult it is to make a living in Vermont. Having the space in our home has also allowed us to update and care for an antique home that badly needed it. Additionally, we are proud of our community and thrilled to share it with our guests with recommendations that bring much needed income to our local businesses. But I want to emphasize a few concerns about the current ordinance draft. Okay, first, it seems that it might be prudent to wait and see where the state of Vermont goes with this issue. I'm going to abridge here. Registration requirements in section 545-5 seem appropriate for the most part. No clarification of the business tax license would be appreciated. In section 545-6, A and B make perfect sense. I agree with Luella that C regarding imminent health concerns is vague and a bit troubling. This is an area where the state has taken a very clear lead. Why impose additional restrictions? This is the 45-minute response time. Maya argues for a 60-minute one because 45 minutes, most of us will be using mobile phones for contact, and mobile coverage is spotty and unreliable. Like Luella on number 5, I'm wondering the impetus for this. I work with Airbnb, which has its own set of protocols. We do not have the ability to amend their contract or create an additional contract that includes subsections 1 through 3. The property owner is responsible for compliance. So what you have to be able to do for those who may be viewing this is to have the zoning bylaw amendment on short-term rentals handy to be able to track the correspondence. What I'm trying to do right now is respect my understanding of open meeting law and read these letters almost in full to show that we are taking this seriously and we're respecting the time that Maya, Luella, and Clark and others have put into crafting these letters for our consideration. Okay, I agree with Luella. Emergencies should be reported to authorities, but we need to remember that poor communication infrastructure here in Southern Vermont and long commute times when we talk about timely and appropriate response times from property managers. Point 8, if all of this is deemed necessary, it'd be lovely if the information other than trash pickup days seems that this should be the owner manager's responsibility, not the guests. Have that provided in one place on the town website with a single shareable link as a resource and not as a requirement of contract. Again, tracking with Luella, should have read that one first. Nonetheless, we must respect our guests' privacy, and most owners have additional jobs that would not allow for last-minute or on-demand inspections. 10, can you clarify what you mean by violations here? Are you talking about trash or noise violations? The $200 per day fine seems a bit steep, given the few rentals rent for that much. Overall, this seems a bit heavy-handed if noise and trash complaints are the real issue. I'm all for better communications between hosts and the town, particularly if there are patterns of unwanted behavior that are making our neighbors uncomfortable or unhappy. It's important to make sure that STR owners understand that they are responsible for their guests meeting town requirements. Owners should make sure that trash is handled appropriately, and they should have resources to share with guests regarding noise. It seems overkill to legislate the manner in which this information is shared with guests, particularly if owners are clear that they alone are responsible if something goes wrong. So I'd like to circle back to the discussion currently happening on the state level. It seems prudent to wait and see what state policy looks like before moving forward with this ordinance, as it may be unnecessary or in conflict with what is decided in Montpelier. We might also want to stop and consider the timing of this. I'm sure that most of us are struggling from a year that has been particularly tough financially due to the disruptions of the pandemic. Thank you so much for serving the town of Newfane and working to keep our community safe and harmonious. Very best, Maya Segura, South Newfane. Okay. As a merciful pause, does anybody have a question or comment or thought before I move to the next letter? I'm not trying to rush us, but give it a moment. Anybody?
Do you want conversation now, Ken, or do you want to just keep us moving?
Yeah, well, actually, your advice on how we might conduct this part of the meeting, I can keep going with the letters and then do the discussion, or if you want a short pause in the middle, call it out.
I'm looking at you can read through them. I think then it might be worth, if not debating every line and every comment. I think there are strong general themes in both what is addressed in the very well taken comments on the sort of line edits and drafting, but also on some of the underlying issues that aren't addressed that maybe are concerns for Newfane to have in mind, even if they're not concerns that can be addressed by a short-term rental regulation.
Right. So,
Are all the letters basically in the same vein? I mean, these are all from people who are short-term rental owners.
right.
This circles back to my personal, I don't want to say disagreement with how the Planning Commission has proceeded on this, but all we have heard from is people who are short-term rental owners. And they are all understandably quite defensive about having their source of income regulated or denied, you know, in any way, which is understandable. The problem is, my personal problem with short-term rentals is that this removes housing from the market that potentially could be for long-term rentals. And affordable long-term rental apartments and houses in this area are unbelievably scarce. And there is growing evidence that short-term rentals are contributing to that by making property that would have been owned and bought by someone and rented out long-term, or possibly bought by someone to live in. Suddenly now we have people who are buying these properties and using them as short-term rental because they get more income from it. That is a statewide issue. And I personally also think that maybe we need to wait until the state does whatever they're going to do. It seems pointless for us to come up with rules that may conflict with the state or may be overridden by the state. So perhaps it is good to simply wait and see what the state does.
Kate?
I just want to underscore the point that Jane made, because I share that concern. I think it's the big one, which is housing availability and affordability in the community, and the effect of turning every available building into short-term rentals. That affects the schools. You know, every house that has a family on vacation doesn't have a student in the schools, and so on. And this is, you know, as I think I've noted before, it's a problem everywhere. But I wonder if refocusing a discussion on kind of the live issues that we know about. I don't know. I think I've asked before if we have data on numbers and income and whether there are real problems, but maybe if we turn to focus a little bit on the issues rather than drafting a bylaw for the sake of, and I don't mean to sound glib or be dismissive. I think Lynn's, the Planning Commission's work is really evident here, but maybe there's a way to focus on some of the big issues without the moving target of making everybody happy.
Okay. I'm going to call out anything if you wish. I'm going to thank you so much, Kate and Dane. I'm going to go forward with Fiona Creed Chevalier. If anybody has a correction on my pronunciation, by all means, speak up. Hi, Ken and Lynn. I'm writing with comments on the proposed STR rental bylaws, or short-term rental bylaws. The opening of the bylaw expresses a rationale to balance the needs of homeowners who have short-term rentals and the desire to have peace and quiet, preserve the neighborhood, and provide safety. I don't find that the regulations proposed balance those needs. The requirements seem very extreme and unbalanced. It seems, from the perspective of someone who does have short-term rentals, like the commission is trying to shut down short-term rentals in our town. Upon first glance at the proposal here are the things that stick out as most egregious. One, the room occupancy restrictions would prevent small families from renting out the cabin we plan to have available through Airbnb this summer. The restrictions do not exclude children is completely unacceptable. An inspection at any time is unreasonable and may violate inspection rules per Airbnb. 24/7 response time and being within physical presence of our rental within 45 minutes would mean our family could not leave our county ever. The town certificate, in addition to the rooms and meals tax we pay already, and the state level certificate that we will most likely be in place this fall, seems an unnecessary fee. It would be helpful to provide guidelines for the amount of the town certificate should such a thing need to happen. There's currently a bill being proposed at the state level. Wouldn't it make more sense or make sense to wait until things are worked out at the state level before creating bylaws at the town level? I request that any bylaws regarding short-term rentals be tabled until the state legislature has voted on the upcoming bill, and do not put this bylaw in place. These bylaws would negatively affect our town because it would close many of the STRs and lower the income of many of our residents. Can you help me understand how this process for the proposal works? I do not see anything about this proposal on the town website or the Front Porch Forum. What outreach are you planning to ensure that stakeholders will have a chance to respond? If the committee does vote to approve this bylaw, does the select board need to approve it as well, or does the planning commission have jurisdiction to put this bylaw in place? I'm happy to talk with you further about these comments and look forward to hearing back from you. Thank you for listening, Fiona Creed Chevalier, or Chevalier. Just to answer the last questions, we have been working on this for the past 2 years, and we did have a hiatus with respect to COVID. We do post, according to open meeting law, we are required to post our agenda on the town website in advance of our meetings, and to post at WW, the town office, as well as the Williamsville Post Office, and More Free Library post agenda there. We have had outreach with short-term rental operators significant times, 2 times over the past year and a half. And so if the committee does vote to approve this bylaw, does the select board need to approve it as well? The answer is yeah. I mean, it would, the planning commission would vote to accept the bylaw, and then we would have a public hearing. It would be then sent to the select board, and the select board would have a public hearing. And there are a lot of steps in between, including multiple forms of notice and other forms of outreach. So by no means does the planning commission have summary authority to just, for instance, tonight, vote to accept the bylaw amendment as proposed, and that's the end of the story. That is absolutely not the case. So there is a tremendous amount of number of steps that happen. What we're doing right now is deliberating amongst ourselves as to whether we will even put forward these short-term rental bylaw amendments for a public hearing. So we're not, as a planning commission, we're not even decided on that point. So we're just deliberating at this point. Does anybody else want to address that? Planning commission? Okay. Hearing no other, let's go with Luella Stratner. Now, there is a little bit of back and forth email, which I think I'll defer on that, but respecting that communication. But this appears to be general communication to the planning commission. Hello, Luella, this is Luella. I don't believe I've read Luella's. Have I read? No, I don't think I have. They're starting to blur. But thank you. Thank you all for writing these letters. Luella, Clark, Fiona, thank you. Maya, thank you for taking the time. Hello, I wanted to share some comments with you all regarding the new bylaws you are proposing for Newfane ahead of your meeting tomorrow. Here we are. For context, I am a primary operator. I do all the communication, booking, cleaning of a short-term rental in Newfane via Airbnb. The apartment is in our family home, an in-law apartment, and we are considering purchasing property for an additional short-term rental in the area. Thank you for all the work that has gone into drafting these bylaws. They are very thorough. 1, I am primarily concerned about the lack of transparency with which these laws are being drafted, with minor input from actual short-term hosts, and likely also neighbors who do not have issues with short-term rentals nearby stakeholders. I've not seen any warning in Front Porch Forum or in any digest about town news. The only way I know about this is because a friend sent me the draft. At what point in the process are you planning to reach out and contact all the short-term rental hosts, stakeholders in Newfane to let them know about impending changes that could significantly impact their operations? 2, the way the bylaws are drafted, it sounds like there have been significant issues, likely parties or disrespectful guests, disgruntled neighbors. I agree that standalone STRs in a residential neighborhood are not ideal. I wouldn't want to live next to a party house, and I can see how some of the bylaws are meant to address those concerns. And I wonder if there are some other things, these ways these concerns can be addressed. An undesirable tenant can be just as troublesome in a long-term rental. How are these neighbor complaints handled? Is there a significant number of complaints, or are these bylaws meant to be proactive? In which case, the message Newfane will be sending is that we don't really want short-term rental visitors here. Vermont runs on tourism. Restricting who can recreate in Vermont and where based on affordable lodging options is classist. The language about the public health crisis is not clear. As currently worded, doesn't mean that a guest has COVID, the rental would be closed down, and if so, for how long? Or if there is an active pandemic, Newfane would further restrict STRs. Would the town provide access for funds to recoup lost business as the state has in such cases? I would defer to the state on this. And if STRs continue to operate when the state says they should not, then there should be some consequences for those operators. We lost easily half our income last year due to being shut down following the rules, like Vermont residents only for a time, and we saw plenty of out-of-state plates at what we think are short-term rentals in town. That was frustrating. 24/7 access to a local agent host who can be on site within 45 minutes is, in the case of an issue, with names, numbers posted on exterior building. I can understand why this is important, especially if there's a fire or some emergency. But how many times has this been an issue? Again, with the general neighbor complaints regarding noise, aren't there already systems in place to address this? Perhaps a warning system needs to be put in place. The language on problematic property booking pages needs to be reviewed by someone at the town. So forth. I agree wholeheartedly about safety and some sort of registration inspection. This should happen for all rentals, not just STRs. Inspections should be scheduled as they are for any other kind of inspection, asking host agents to be available at any time during business hours, and so forth there. Especially if it seems unreasonable, especially if guests are staying there. If it's related to a complaint, given the current guests, then maybe, but my sense is the realistic timing on this will be such that whoever's causing the problem will be long gone by the time an inspector comes around to check, by the time Walt gets over there. Okay. Okay. This is serious. I do take this seriously. The commission does too, but just to give it a pause there. The trash issue, given how much it is mentioned clearly, it is a problem. I would caution against language restricting trash storage outside, as many homeowners have sheds or bins where they place their trash. I get trash bags left in a pile somewhere being problematic, unsightly, especially on trash pickup day. Whatever laws or bylaws are enacted regarding trash should be the same for all residents. And I would encourage wording in the bylaws allowing some sort of closable bin shed container that's designated for trash. If there are bears, there are rules and language around, about composting food scraps and such. No unclear language on unconventional short-term rentals like tents, campers, tiny homes, off-the-grid cabins, primitive structures. Is this intentional, or will STR lodging opportunities be restricted for traditional houses with plumbing, electricity? Strongly caution against this, as again, these are often even more affordable ways for people to recreate in Vermont, are often small and therefore limit the number of guests, and are an important and often necessary way for farms to supplement income, agro-tourism. So closing the letter here, Luell says the vast majority of our guests have been respectful, quiet, self-sufficient, friendly, and visiting, to either experience the beauty of Southern Vermont, or to see family, or to be here for work or looking for an apartment home. They're seeking privacy. They do not want a B&B or inn with all that entails. They want good value. making vacationing accessible. When the pandemic, a kitchen so they can prepare their own meals. Vermont is notorious for not having enough good paying jobs and a high cost of living, and the income from our rental, while modest, has been incredibly supportive, and a fair portion of it has gone back into the local economy. So additionally, having these houses spaces occupied by paying guests does positively impact the local economy, service people to local restaurants and stores, and I think it's better than having them all, than just having them all sit empty for months at a time. With STRs, you expose many more people to the reality of what it might be like to live here, and maybe more will choose to make Vermont a permanent home. Requiring the local agent will likely turn into a business opportunity for some enterprising folks, which could be a positive thing. Thank you for all your work on this. I do appreciate the overarching goals of the bylaws, and I think with community engagement on this topic, we can come to an arrangement that works for everybody while preserving the charm of rural Vermont living. Warmly, Luella. Thank you, Luella, for that, and for all the detailed work that you put into this letter. So I hope we've respected your time and by reading this letter to the Planning Commission, and for those who are viewing our work tonight. Okay, so I do believe and that we're working with one more letter, and I, will then move into a letter that is, okay, be right with you. All right, the beauty of working from home. So I could have taken the call, but all right. This is Juliet Carr. Well, should I have taken the call? Maybe you were trying to call me, Walt, and say, don't wrap this meeting up, Okay, here we go. This is the final letter, everybody. And
Yay.
yes. I would note, allow me to look at the clock. We're doing pretty well on time here. This is really it. Okay, I could say more, but here. Hi, Lynn and Ken. Thank you for the opportunity to look at the draft, for clearly putting so much time and thought into this process. As a family that survives here because of our short-term rental, my husband and I certainly agree that registration is important, although since they're working on it in the State House, I'm not sure how much, how that will impact Newfane's rules and fees. What effort will be made to avoid redundancy? Is there a potential benefit in waiting until we see what comes down from the state before we add Newfane specific rules? Does this mean that hosts would need a separate business license in addition to the room and meals and income taxes we pay, plus town registration and state registration? If so, that seems excessive. Some parts of the draft do not mesh with how the rental platforms work, which is an issue. For instance, the platforms have standard rental agreements and guest verification in place, so that section is redundant. It would be impossible to put additional agreements in place on rental platforms. Also, being audited without notice is inappropriate. Under platform rules, hosts can't enter without notice unless there's evidence of damage, like smoke alarm. It would likely be a different guess by the time a complaint becomes an inspection. Inspections should be scheduled, as they are for other rentals. The capacity rule does not translate well to popular non-traditional structures. Since you're using bedrooms to determine capacity, can there be an exception for non-traditional structures? For instance, a friend has an 800 square foot yurt that is comfortable for a family of 6, even without walls. Likewise, another friend has a tiny house with a loft that sleeps a family of 4, but again, doesn't have walls. Since non-traditional structures are really important to tourism, especially farm stays, and increased middle income access with the subsequent economic benefit to Newfane, we should accommodate them instead of accidentally putting them on the wrong side of the rules. A local host is essential, but 45-minute response time is unrealistic when we consider the reality of a cottage industry in southern Vermont. Many locals work an hour away, and since there are so many few jobs, no one who leaves their house is reachable by phone 24/7 because of the cell service. My guests use the platform messenger if they need to reach me because it comes through faster than voicemail. The response time should reflect the reality of living here. Perhaps simple language that a host or manager must be locally available to respond to any problems that arise having the contact on file with the town as part of the registration would be more appropriate than posting it public. So it's important that rental restrictions are written on the understanding that most Newfane residents who host are working families and, you know, retirees trying to stay here. When we think about our town priorities in terms of attracting and maintaining full-time residents in the context of a seasonal economy with one of the highest costs of living in the country and few high-paying jobs, we need to realize that rentals help people stay here and generate a lot of taxes for the town and state. It is important to ensure that neighborly standards are followed, but we also need to ensure that the rules work in a real-life application so we don't remove the economic viability of a significant portion of working residents in Newfane. It would be ideal if this could be a collaborative process with stakeholders to help the Planning Commission avoid pitfalls and keep the needs of working families in mind. Thank you again for all your efforts for Newfane and for taking the time to read these comments. So, sincerely, Juliet Carr. Okay. I do believe I've covered all the letters. Stop share. And yeah, thank you. I'm looking at the participant list. My phone rang twice while I was reading, thinking, okay, maybe Lynn's trying to get in. All right, so allow me to frame our work here. We can agree to do nothing and go to our next meeting and continue to deliberate. We can come to an agreement tonight about an action that we would like to undertake. We could develop a motion that we would vote on. We can do all those things after we have some discussion of the letters, as Kate suggested that we could do that. What is the pleasure of the commission with respect to this input? Jane?
I've got several thoughts, I guess. I know the statewide regulations are being pushed in part by hotel and inn and bed and breakfast owners who feel that short-term rentals are taking away their business, are undermining, you know, their ability to earn a decent living and support their staff. You know, they are another stakeholder in the whole regulation question that we have heard absolutely nothing from anyone in our town. I don't think we have any hotels or motels even in town, do we? But,
which one, Walt?
4 columns.
oh, that's true. 4 columns, and I know there are a couple
One
of
down by Williamsville with the it's got the tree house.
yeah.
Great.
And so we haven't heard from anyone on that, from that perspective. You know, like I said, all we've heard from is people who have short-term rentals. My personal perspective is more from the point of view of affordable housing. We are eliminating affordable housing. We are taking apartments that could be rented for $800 to someone to live there every month for years, and instead they're renting it for $100 or $200 a weekend, and they don't even have to put up with someone being there all the time. You know, long-term renters are more of a headache sometimes, but given the choice, I think we as a town would prefer to have long-term renters. You know, so several people have made it sound as though we want to limit the number of short-term rentals. And my response is, yes, I think we should limit the number of short-term rentals. I think we are eliminating what makes Vermont, Vermont. We are a community of people who know each other by name and face. We become a community. We work together through thick and thin, through all kinds of issues. And if instead of having neighbors that you know who've been here for months and years, instead you have neighbors that just, people who just show up, are here for a weekend and disappear again, never to be seen, destroys that sense of community, that feeling that we are a group. I'm trying to figure out how to say this, but the out-of-state visitors we get tend to be from Connecticut and New York and New Jersey. They can afford much higher rents than people who work here. Everyone keeps mentioning the high cost of living, but nobody has mentioned the fact that because we have so many short-term rentals, there's not affordable housing, and that's why the cost of living is so high here. That we need to do something to find a balance between encouraging visitors and encouraging people to live here. And especially people to live here who may not be wealthy. You know, people in New York and Boston, they earn way bigger salaries than people who live here. So they don't mind spending an awful lot of money on a dinner or a gallon of gas that for us is a crippling expense that live here. I don't know. I would rather have citizens of the community here than lots and lots of out-of-state visitors who bring their money but make it virtually impossible for anyone who wants to live in Vermont who doesn't earn at least $100,000 a year to be able to get a house here. You know, I think primarily though, I think we need to wait and find out what the state does. This is a big issue with the state. They're looking at it from the terms of a lack of affordable housing, that short-term rentals are cutting into the available affordable housing. And I think we just need to wait to see what the state does before we try to do anything for our town.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you. Anyone else?
Nolan, are you waving?
No. I was going to say a couple things.
Go for it.
I didn't mean to be, I meant like waving to speak. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Kate, for that. Yeah, go ahead, Nolan.
Yeah, I think I'm, especially after the panel we had a couple weeks ago, I'm very much feeling what Kate and Jane have been saying about refocusing this on affordable housing. And I'm feeling I don't want to make any decisions without Lynn because she's put so much work into this, I think. But I'm feeling like we should be taking many steps back on this. Kind of back to Ken, I don't know if you remember, but we kind of originally just looked at adding the definition of short-term rentals to the bylaw, I think, kind of
Yes.
In the same way that Dummerston has and other towns have. I would be in favor of going back to something like that and looking at affordable housing, where would we allow short-term rentals in town and stuff, and then and waiting to see what the town does as far as regulation goes, or sorry, the state does.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Nolan. Kate?
I'm going to defer to Jeanette first, I think, Ken, because I think she's been raising her hand a few times.
Oh.
Am I reading you right, Jeanette, that you're raising your hand?
I was just thinking that I know from living right here, we have some people that come in and they use different houses for the week or something like that. That's fine. I don't mind that. But what I don't think is right to the rest of us is they'll have 4 or 5 dogs or whatever. Just let them go and they get into everybody's stuff. And, we got a few that are here most of the time that used to be that way, but they got over it. And I think it's maybe the people that come in for the weekend, they're just thinking about, well, we're here, this is it. And, they're not thinking ahead of who their neighbors are going to be or anything like that. I may be wrong, but that's...
Okay, thank you, Jeanette. And thank you, Kate, for alerting me to Jeanette's hand. So thank you, Jeanette, for that. Kate?
As I said before, I agree with Jane and I agree with Nolan's suggestion that we take a step back and simplify the approach. I think that not as a drafting proposal, but just as something to start talking about or leave kind of thinking about is what would distinguish the kind of short-term rentals. I think we should wait for the state probably at this point at least, but it's probably worth starting to think about what distinguishes the kinds of short-term rentals that are problematic versus, you know, supportive. Is it quantity? Is it in-home? I don't know if that feeds into the definition that goes into the bylaws, but I think starting to think about where there are defining issues, because they're not all, overall it's a problem, but they're not all alike, and maybe thinking about whether to draft or just to discuss kind of how we could make suggestions about, constructive suggestions might be something to start thinking about, if not this week, you know, in the relatively near future.
Okay, I too share the idea that we would wait for the state, and picking up with Nolan's point, you know, and thinking of Walt, who's with us tonight, you know, Walt, as a development review board member, at the minimum, having, you know, a mention of short-term rental only with a definition would probably advance the cause of the original issue that brought us into this whole discussion, which is that the lack of mention of short-term rental as such and nothing more makes your life more difficult on the DRB. If we were to simply mention short-term rental and then define it in the definitions of our zoning bylaw, that would probably be useful to you. Is that correct? You're on mute, Walt. I put you on mute. I'm sorry. Let me, okay. Hang on. I gotta unmute you somehow. Maybe you can do it yourself, to unmute yourself, Walt.
How's that?
There we go.
Am I back among the living?
You are now. Thank you for joining us again.
Okay. Yeah, that would simplify things for DRB, but it would basically, unless it was just a definition of the short-term rentals and skeleton type regulations, we'd probably end up approving a bunch. We'd have no reason not to approve them. And I don't know if that approve them or regulate them, and I'm not sure that works in favor of striking a balance between having too many and not enough.
Well, it seems that the too many and not enough. Oh, you mean in terms of regulations? Yeah.
And
Well,
in terms of short-term rentals too, you know, I guess in a perfect world we'd have some, but not too many. And I think some of the things that Jane's saying, I guess, hit in a responsive chord with me, that we can get inundated with short-term rentals at the expense of affordable housing. So, you know, I'm not sure where the balance runs between having a certain number of short-term rentals and then regulating them too much or not regulating them at all.
yeah, and then there's the argument of the short-term rental operators who say, the only way I can afford my house is to have a short-term rental.
Yeah.
So for short-term rental operators, they can make the argument about affordability as well. I'm not trying to deny or downgrade the point that you're making, nor Nolan, nor Jane, but also pointing out that a likely response or rejoinder from the short-term rental operators would say, and in fact, we saw it in the letters tonight, that they're facing affordability costs for which a short-term rental is their remedy.
Yeah, well, that's a valid point. Life would be very easy if all the short-term rentals were a room in a full-time resident's house that they rented out and still occupied the house as a regular full-time occupant when rented out just part of their house.
I think most of the comments in those letters were from people who are renting rooms or structures on their property, unless I misunderstood it.
Yeah, they are. And I guess, you know, they make the point that being able to rent this part of their house or part of their property is what stands between them of being able to afford to live here and not being able to afford to live here. So you have to take that into account. But what you worry about, I guess, is one person buying 3 or 4 houses and turning them into short-term rentals and changing the character of the town, like Jane was talking about.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I'm not sure I answered the question.
I wish there was some way we could get more statistics. You know, I'm a data kind of person. I think we need to make decisions based on some sort of data. How many short-term rental units are there in town? How many are rented out? You know, 1 bedroom or a bedroom in someone's home that someone lives in full-time versus how many are standalone houses or houses that are second homes that people rent out part of the time so they're not living there. I mean, we don't have a good feel for any of that. And I think that's where we're trying to get a feel for what is the problem.
Yeah.
yes. Well, okay. So I think that and maybe I'm a little shaky right now, but it seems that we could represent, I don't know if a motion is necessary, but the sense of the Planning Commission, you know, on this March 25th is to, and this, I'm posing this as a question to the to commissioners now. Do we have a general agreement that as a commission, we would like to wait before we do any more substantial work on this, to wait until we know more from the state? Is that the general sense of what we're doing here? And would we like to reflect that in the minutes as our understanding for tonight?
I think it would be a good idea to wait and see what direction is coming out of Montpelier before we start, you know, negotiating over the wording of the bylaws down to the minutiae. I think we just need to know where this is going as an issue in the whole.
Okay, you froze up there a little bit, Jane, but Nolan?
I did say, I mean, I said I wanted to wait for Lynn, but I think we have 3, if not all, the 4 of us are in agreement about waiting for the state.
Yeah, well, you know, I mean, if we want to move into a motion situation, I mean, you could propose a motion on that, Nolan, if you'd like. It's obviously.
I was just thinking if we're all in agreement, we could just agree that we're going to wait.
Mm-hmm. Mind you, I'm not against motions and such. I mean, I'll grant my grasp of Robert's Rules of Order is weak. So, you know, okay, well then, the sense here is that the implication of waiting to hear more from the state means concretely, at least in my thinking, that we might have more time to devote to other matters in the work of the Planning Commission in the interim. Now, what people do on their own time, of course, you know, if any one of us could pursue, you know, research on this on our own and such, but I mean, as a commission, it means that our agenda and our time that we devote to different aspects of the agenda and what we do in between meetings might shift. So that, you know, that's a concrete outcome of a general agreement that we would wait until we hear more from the state. Do we have a sense of when the state is going to act on this, or when we might expect? When does the session wrap up by? Kate, do you know?
I don't know. I'm happy to try to find out what I can, but I don't know. I'm sorry. I know we're on a bit of an odd year because of the COVID echo, but I don't know, I'm afraid.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, if you could, you know, I mean, I think Lynn might be really interested in doing that, but it may be if Kate, you could just do like a preliminary look at maybe there's some sense of when we might expect something. If there's a difference between 2 weeks, 4 weeks, and 8 weeks, you know, I mean, if it's 8 weeks, then it's 8 weeks, but. Okay, well then, Nolan, I guess if I don't hear any objections from or amendments to the idea, informal amendments to the idea that the minutes would reflect the general sense that the commission would like to wait until we hear more from Montpelier on the status of state regulations for rentals. And that we would, act accordingly, which means our agenda would shift and we would move into some other issues. Not that we would stop the discussion, I suppose, but I mean, the thrust of what we're agreeing to is that we're going to hold out a little bit. Is that a fair read on our discussion tonight?
I think so.
Okay. Well,
yeah,
go ahead.
I think we should continue to look at it. The affordable housing issue, though, as it relates to short-term rental.
I think the minutes. It seems fair that the minutes should reflect that as well. And and maybe continued. However, there still is the matter of whether and I guess we can't do it all tonight, but I think we do have to return to some fundamental questions that the DRB has posed to us. There's a difference between having a very large zoning bylaw amendment that incorporates all the things that Lynn has worked on. There's a difference between that and a simple mention of a short-term rental with a definition at the end of the zoning bylaw that would at least give the DRB a chance to recognize it and work with it if it comes up. Is that fair, Walt, to say? You're on mute again, I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Walt. Oh, you're on mute again. That mute button is really giving you a hard time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that would give us something to work with, but it's got a hidden, I guess, disadvantage too, because we would end up approving a lot of short-term rentals without any real regulation, or we'd be setting a precedent, and I'm not sure that's what we want to do. So we originally said we wanted to have some regulations to define short-term rentals and to set some standards, and we'd be approving them without that.
I see. Well, and that gets us back to the state regulations.
Yeah.
Kate?
I think if it's a question of drafting language to say what's acceptable, then indeed it will get to the meat of what's an acceptable short-term rental, and we're back at the big question.
Yeah.
But there may be drafting ways to, I think I would want to look directly at the language, and I haven't tried to do this yet, but to at least tie short-term rentals to state standards. We may have to come back and have, but there might be a way. I'm not sure, but I'd have to think about it more in terms of exactly how it would go into the zoning bylaw. But there might be a way to hold space to at least create a minimum threshold. I'm not sure, but indeed we'll have to, for defining what's an acceptable short-term rental, unless you put in language saying this isn't defining what's acceptable, it's just saying, rentals that are less than 30 days have to follow the same standards as full-time. I don't know, but it may be a technical question.
Right. Well, then, go ahead, Noah. Yeah.
Just to add, and part of that is also going to be deciding which districts and stuff
That's right.
They're allowed in, so that there might be a way to fit that stuff in.
Yeah, that's right. You're right. Well, might I suggest that we've done the good work for tonight? Looking at the agenda, and we've done everything else. So I just looked at the agenda. Does the spirit of our gathering, have we reached our endpoint for tonight?
We came for the short-term rentals, we stayed for the dramatic reading, but yes.
I hope that you enjoyed that, everyone. So, all right. Well then, thank you all. Hearing no other comments or points, Nolan, you get the big task of the minutes here, but we'll review the minutes as well. Nolan, do you have a question or a point? Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to move we adjourn.
Ah,
I'll second it.
wow. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, well, thank you all.